I'm Dr. Jordin Wiggins, and this is the Pleasure Principles podcast. Join me on this journey where sex, science, and sensuality meet. Let's change the conversation around sex and pleasure together. Male sexual response has been fairly well studied. And the fact that women's sexual anatomy is, and I just was looking through medical journals to see what has changed. And I found an article that said women's sexual anatomy is substantially improving understanding of the complex anatomy and physiology of women's sexual response. Now, I'm happy to see that there is more research being done into women's sexual anatomy, women's orgasm. That is amazing. What I am not in favor of is the stories that are told around women's pleasure, that the clitoris is hard to find. Women's anatomy is the complex anatomy and physiology of the sexual response of women. Like, why are we constantly being compared to men? And women who have sex with women, there is less of an orgasm gap. And the orgasm gap, I've talked about this in previous podcasts. I talk about it in my book, The Pink Canary. But in heterosexual relationship, 95% of men are reporting that they are always orgasming during sex, and only 65% of heterosexual women. One of my favorite sex educators, Dr. Lori Mintz, says that the number one reason for the orgasm gap is our cultural ignorance of the clitoris. And I would tend to agree. We are going to talk about that today. So I call this pleasure anatomy, the understanding of women's bodies, people with vulvas, people with clitorises, and how they work. So first and foremost, the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings. That is double that of the penis. So double the pleasure, double the sensation. In fact, it's why most men touch us too hard, because the pressure and sensation required for them is a little different than what's required for us. And again, that's just a generalization. This is not true in all cases all the time. But my tip is to try playing around with a little bit of lighter touch. The clitoris has been left out of medical texts until the 90s. So it was just like not included. Freud called clitoral orgasms immature and vaginal orgasms are mature, perpetuating the message that if you cannot orgasm from penis and vagina sex, something is wrong with the woman. She is broken. I did poll our Pleasure Principles group very recently, and I am happy to say that this thinking is being updated. Many of the women said that they don't feel like a clitoral orgasm is less than a vaginal orgasm. However, there is still the kind of underlying goal or pressure to orgasm from penetrative sex, when only 30% of women reliably orgasm from penetration. That means the other 70, the other overwhelming majority of women require external clitoral stimulation. And we're going to talk about why today, and we're going to try and connect some of these things. So you are not wrong. Your body is not broken. It's that we don't understand the clitoris. That is the key to pleasure. In fact, I would say that all orgasms come from the clitoris. No matter where the stimulation is occurring, the clitoris and its internal structure is involved. Now, before we dive into today's teachings, I just wanted to say, if you are exhausted, overwhelmed, and unfulfilled, you've done the things, the therapy, the coaching, the alternative health practitioners, and something is still missing, this is where I excel. As the CEO of your pleasure and your health, I'm opening up 2 spots for my 3-month one-on-one coaching this fall. It is probably the last time that you are going to get to work with me one-on-one this year. So do not wait, fill out an application. We're going to put the link in the show notes. It's thepleasurecollective.com/coaching. You will hear from me and my team within 72 hours. If you don't, check your spam folders. You and I are then going to get on a call to discuss if it is the right fit for us both. It is not in my pleasure if this is not going to be fun and pleasurable for both of us. There will be hard moments because I am a fan of tough love, and that is what you are paying me for, is for speed and to call out your blocks, because you are smart. You're resourced. You've tried a lot of things and you need a little help seeing what you can't see. That's why I have a coach. And I want you to fill out the application a little scared. Everyone that does this work on this level feels some type of uneasiness. Is my relationship going to survive this? Do I need to blow up my whole life? And I'm happy to report that the answer is no. The work is easier and more fun than you think. So if you are a high achieving superwoman and my work speaks to you, head to the show notes, thepleasurecollective.com/coaching, and fill out an application. So back to today's teaching, I want to talk about the G-spot as our next stop on our pleasure anatomy training. The G-spot is not actually a spot. And this is where I think superwomen go wrong, because we like to get things right. We like to get it our A+ and check the box. We are in our heads, we're not in our bodies. Therefore, we are not present and it is not pleasurable. So that's 2 of my 3 keys of great sex and intimacy that we are not doing when we are trying to get this right. So G-spot, when we are hearing about it online, when we are learning about it, it is located on the anterior wall of the vagina. So if you are inserting a finger or a toy into your vagina, that is up towards your belly button, and it's in 1 to 3 inches, depending on what you read, depending on your anatomy. And it is stimulated by a come here motion. When it is aroused, it can feel a little different than the surrounding tissue, a little spongier, but you know that you've hit this area or you're stimulating this area when it feels good, when there's an increase in pleasure, an increase in sensation. And what I want you to know about the G-spot, so it's not really a spot, it is a combination of nerves. And when we are stimulating this area, this is when you could squirt or have vaginal orgasms. And yeah, think of it as, and this is when it's like the complexity of women's pleasure anatomy. Really, it's not just a single organ or a single spot, but the synergistic action of multiple organs and tissues when they are stimulated. So here are my tips on finding your G-spot. I recommend doing this alone, which requires setting some boundaries. Oftentimes I hear that if one of my clients, and this came up on our pleasure principles call as well, that if someone's partner learns that they are going to self-pleasure or try something new, their partner tries to insert themselves in this. So this is something that I recommend doing alone when your partner isn't home, or even saying, I need an hour to myself. Not that it's going to take that long, but just, you know what I mean? We don't want the time pressure, because that puts the brakes on desire and arousal. Also, somebody inserting themselves into your pleasure is kind of gross and icky, but that is another conversation for another day. And all of that, communicating that, setting those boundaries in a way that you stay connected, is something that I teach in Pleasure Principles. So tips for finding your G-spot. Do it alone. Make sure you have the time and space to be relaxed. Get aroused first. Do not try and go directly for your G-spot, especially if you don't know where it is. This is something that with more blood flow, arousal, things will engorge and they will become more sensitive. So it is easier to find once you're already aroused. I recommend using your fingers or a toy for that is meant for G-spot stimulation. I'm going to give you 2 tips on things that I like in a minute. And you are going to want to try and lift up toward your belly button. And like I already mentioned, it's a come here motion. It's so it's like the anterior wall of your vagina up towards your belly button, and it's not an in and out, more of a pressing along the top wall of your vagina if you were laying on your back. So that's why, like, in and out, a lot of what we see in porn, what is pleasurable for men as far as stroking, is not what is most pleasurable for women when we are talking about penetration. So this is where we differ. This is where knowledge and understanding is very important. So I love wands, vaginal wands. When you know how to use them, they are amazing for pleasure exploration. This is the Anna G-spot wand in obsidian, and you'll notice the curvature. So when we are trying to hit the top wall of our vagina, it is shaped for that come hither motion. So it is intended for G-spot pleasure. You can use this hot or cold. It gets warm and stays warm, so it has like a realistic sensation. Anyways, highly recommend this. My discount code is Dr. Jordin if you would love to order one of these for yourself. And now let's talk about my 3 favorite positions. So ideally, you are practicing this alone. You are using your fingers or a toy to find your G-spot, find the pressure, the pace, how it likes to be stroked. And you can find that increasing speed, sensation, pressure will bring you to orgasm and even squirting if that's your thing. Again, more details on that in Pleasure Principles. And let's talk about the best positions for stimulating the CUV complex. First is cowgirl, and I'm starting with that because that is partner lying down, you straddling them. This position allows you to have control. Lots of super women love control and can orgasm in this position. Also because there is some clitoral stimulation as well, but you have control over the depth, the rhythm, the angle of penetration, so you can focus on finding your G-spot or stimulating the CUV complex, how it feels the best for you, making it easier to orgasm from penetration. And instead of porn, bobbing up and down, ladies, teach him something with your hips. Try moving back and forth in a way that feels good to you, in a way that is stimulating that area on your internal vaginal wall. Do not be afraid to experiment with different speeds and angles. In fact, most men love this. And when they know that you are doing what feels best for you and finding a way of moving that feels best for you, it is generally a massive, massive turn on. So don't worry about doing it right. We are doing pleasure research. Position number 2 is doggy style on an angle. And this is another way to work at hitting your G-spot, starting on your hands and knees with your partner behind you. During penetration, lean down onto your forearms and kind of push your hips up and back. And if your partner is trying to aim towards your belly button, that's the key. You could also use a pillow or a couple pillows under your hips. A sex pillow works great for this to help achieve that angle. Trust me, you're gonna know when you're hitting it. And yeah, partner aiming for your belly button. And again, we want to think of more of a sliding motion along that anterior vaginal wall and not as much pounding in and out. And the third position that I would recommend is missionary with a twist. So missionary with our legs closed or closer together. Your partner's legs should straddle yours. So this is going to allow a tighter squeeze, more pressure on the clitoral urethral vaginal complex. It's generally a shallower penetration, more pressure. So that's equaling to increased friction against your G-spot or your CUV complex. And again, I know I'm stressing this, but I think many men need to hear it. Think less of in and out motion and more like sliding along that anterior vaginal wall. Partner can think of rubbing along the top part of your vagina, and sometimes they can feel really nice with the top ridge of their penis. Hopefully these tips are helpful. For more detail, you're going to want to check out my signature program, Pleasure Principles. We have a 2-hour training on female pleasure anatomy inside. I never mean to make like sexual puns, but just part of the job, I guess. So Pleasure Principles is my semi-private group program to enhance, reignite, and communicate your desires while bringing vitality back to you and your relationships. There are currently 7 modules online, and I am always going to be adding part 1 of how to give a memorable blowjob this month. There's hours of video trainings, hours of call recordings. If you cannot make it live, there are handouts, there are worksheets, there are quizzes, there are communication scripts. So much of what you need to know for you and your pleasure in and out of the bedroom in one place. We also have one group call per month led by me where you can ask questions if you get stuck. There's just so much learning and shame slaying when we are discussing with other women, and we realize that we are not alone and all having very similar issues arise in our pleasure research and in our relationships. So I highly, highly recommend you signing up for Pleasure Principles. Do not wait. You deserve a life full of pleasure and fulfillment in and out of the bedroom. Do not put this off until, after the kids start school, because then before you know it, it's Christmas and it's the new year and then it's Valentine's Day and you are still unfulfilled and underfucked, and your relationship is in a worse position than it already is. If you are single, feel free to join us. There is a mix of single and coupled people on these calls that take this program. And finding your pleasure, your turn on, being able to communicate this is such a great skill for any type of intimacy that you are having. So do not let that be the barrier. As always, I am available on Instagram. Send me a DM with questions, and I am happy to get on a call and make sure that Pleasure Principles is the right fit for you. Have a great week, everybody. If you like what you heard in this episode, leave me a rating. Your support helps me get discovered by more women like you. Together, we can change the conversation around women's sexual health and pleasure for you, your partners, and generations to come.